Moderator of this session of the Festival of Diplomacy. And we are going to speak about cultural heritage and its protection. So for those who are not interested, you can just leave the room. But if you want to know a little bit more about this extremely interesting and passionate issue, I think you should stay, and you have the best panelists that you could have. So it's really a privilege for me to moderate this panel today with all the panelists here around. I have to thank, of course, the diplomacy, the festival, the Diplomazia, because they invited me, in particular Giorgio Bartolomucci. I have to mention him for all his work and for all the activities. We have today even less than 1 hour, which is quite a challenge. So this imposes to me to speak very, very little, which is difficult for an ambassador, as you know. So I will try to limit what I say to the minimum, but I don't promise I will succeed. While, of course, I hope that we will respect our time that we already fixed, so that we have a little bit of time for your questions, which is also, I think, very interesting for us to hear. So we're going to start speaking about cultural heritage and its protection. I think most of you have read the introduction, which was prepared for this session. So I don't want to prolong the description of why there is this session in the context of a festival, which this year is dedicated to the cost of principles. It's very much related because, of course, when we talk about cultural heritage, we talk about identity, we talk sometimes about conflicts, we talked about pride of a country, we talk about many issues which are really at the heart of sovereignty, of recognition, and many other things. So I think we will hear about this by our panelists. So I will not take any longer to go on this direction. I would like immediately to start with our first panelist, which is Nora Visoka-Weller, professor at the University of Cambridge. And for those who have read her biography, they will learn all her activities, her experience in many international organizations as advisors, consultants, and all her activity. I was particularly struck by all her activity on art law, which is, of course, a very extremely relevant issue when we talk about cultural heritage. And I think she will lead us more into this issue. And of course, she's also very knowledgeable about cultural heritage and conflicts, let's say. So I would like to ask her, as an invitation to what she will present to us, a kind of question, which is why cultural heritage is so relevant in many conflicts. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Shall I? My sister it make more sense. I'm gonna give you this then. I'm very sorry because I was told that I have limited time and I'm very time wary. So this is going to be difficult because it's like a fast forward to a history of the war in the Balkans. And if you know anything about conflict, that's probably one of the most complex conflicts you can ever encounter. So we're going to talk today about the cultural heritage in diplomacy and in peace negotiations, and what happens when interventions in using heritage in peace negotiations, what comes out of it, and what comes out of situations where there is no intervention whatsoever. I think I have something to change the slide maybe somewhere. Is there Okay, so I'm really anti-tech, but let's see. Okay, so cultural heritage, also to answer the question, is the importance of heritage in diplomacy is not really, it extends beyond preserving objects as such. It extends beyond preservation and just appreciation of historical values and their materialistic values that they have. Cultural heritage, it goes beyond that. It serves as a means of soft power between two nations or two cultures or two identities, different ones. It enables different countries to project their values, their traditions, and their achievements, like for young countries in particular, or for states that want to really have a role in the global stage. Cultural heritage is really important. For many countries, also Italy in itself as well, it's tourism and economic opportunities. So it is also about reputation. We all take a lot of pride in all the cultural values that we promote to others. Even individually, we take pride in what our countries possess and what our cultures, therefore, are enriched with. So it is about reputation as well. Moreover, it facilitates, or it can facilitate dialogue and those very difficult issues. And in this presentation, you will see how that happens. And it can also create conflict. And that's why it is a relevant issue in many countries of conflict. So what happens, therefore, when cultural heritage becomes a primary tool in regional diplomacy? And I'm going to talk on this case about the case of Kosovo and Serbia. How many of you are familiar with the case of Kosovo and the war in Kosovo? Raise your hand. Don't be shy. Great. So, well, then you know that Kosovo is in the southeastern part of Europe. There was a conflict. It was part of the former Yugoslavia. As I said, I'm going to fast forward this history. It was in conflict with Serbia, and out of that conflict, Kosovo emerged as an independent state. And about 6 years after Kosovo's conflict ended in 2000, with, as you may know, with the NATO intervention, there were peace negotiations about finalizing the status of Kosovo. And that happened in year 2007, and the negotiations took place in Vienna. So you have a photo here of the former president of Finland, Martti Ahtisaari, on your right. And the main point of concluding the negotiations between Serbia and Kosovo were the Serbian Orthodox monasteries and their position in Kosovo once it gains a new status. So in that light, around 44 sites, which were important, of cultural and religious importance to the Serbian community, were given a status, and the status was a special protective zones. So what is special protection? So these heritage sites were, and I'm going to give you an example now, were given special protection. So normally special protection in the Hague Convention means that they are given a special protection, like kind of an immunity from not being attacked in war, in real conflict, when war is actually happening. But Kosovo in year 2006 was not really in war. The war had ended in year 2000. So, and then of course the UNESCO guidelines give the buffer zones, which you probably are familiar with if you are into cultural heritage, in Articles 98 and 119, for protected areas which are divided and have clear denominated boundaries. So these sites in Kosovo were neither falling in the in the Hague Convention, nor in the UNESCO operational guidelines. They were somewhere in between. So they were still considered special, they were given the special protective status. So this is one of the very famous, beautiful monasteries in Kosovo. It's a 14th century Orthodox church, which is in a town in Kosovo, Dečani, and it is on the border with Montenegro, so surrounded by the Albanian Alps, a beautiful area. So the monastery was demarcated as a special protective zone according to the peace negotiations. And it also, in year before, it was put in the UNESCO World Heritage Sites. So this monastery was listed as World Heritage by Serbia in a time when Kosovo was actually not part of Serbia, which also makes its protection very complex in terms of UNESCO and UNESCO rules. And as it stands right now, it is, if you look carefully, and thank you to KFOR for giving me this map, the NATO troops in Kosovo, the buffer zone, which is according to the UNESCO rules, is the one in the purple. And the other yellow and the red zone are actually the boundaries that they created for the safety along the time as time progressed. So they extend these two other lines, the yellow and the red, beyond the actual buffer zone and beyond the actual protective zone or protection according to the Hague Convention as well. So in a way, it has buffer zones according to UNESCO, but at the same time is being treated a little bit like a demilitarized zone, because if you go there, if you want to go to see this UNESCO heritage site, you will have to go through this stop, which doesn't really look like a, what do you think this looks like? It looks a little bit like you're entering in a pretty dangerous zone. But it's not really, it's a really nice and quiet, beautiful area. And outside, you have military as well. So who is in charge of this protection? Who are the stakeholders? I mean, the international community intervened in providing this protection. So bear this in mind. That in principle, there should be Kosovo authorities. Serbia is involved, but Serbia de facto and de jure has no control over the territory of Kosovo. And one thing that I want you to pay attention to is that local heritage professionals, local authorities, local as in municipal authorities, and local surrounding communities, the communities that surround this area, they were not really consulted at any point. Nobody went to them to say, how do you feel about us putting these boundaries all the way to here? And of course, we want to, you know, if we go to Louvre nowadays, we want to know that things are protected. And I am all for that protection, but we have to be careful that when we negotiate cultural heritage protection, we don't turn them into inaccessible sites. And to give you another context, this picture is of a city, Ottoman city in Kosovo. And you can see an Orthodox church, a Catholic church, and a mosque about 500 to 1,000 meters away from one another. So religious conflict was really never a thing. In fact, Kosovo was quite popular for providing sort of that example of harmony between different religious groups. And so next thing, I want to show you how heritage and diplomacy are at play firsthand. So in 1998, during the very war in Kosovo, the Serbian army removed around 1,250 artifacts from the National Museum of Kosovo. And the pretext of removing those artifacts was that they were borrowing them to send them to the Academy of Sciences in Belgrade and then perhaps do different exhibitions around. And that was during the active war in 1998. And this is the Goddess of Throne. It's an artifact which is very famous because it represents the capital of Kosovo, Pristina. And in that package of negotiations, which I showed you at first, in the Ahtisaari plan, Article 5 says that in exchange for those heritage sites to be turned as special protective zones, Serbia needs to return these 1,250 artifacts back to the museum. And they were negotiating for, I think, over some months on this. And according to the plan, the return should have happened between like 60 to 120 days. And that never happened. To this day, these artifacts were not returned. But they were used, again, these cultural heritage artifacts and the cultural heritage sites, they were used as a balancing act vis-a-vis one another. Now, the only artifact that was returned to Kosovo was this one, the goddess of the throne. And this artifact was returned by the then special representative of the Secretary General in Kosovo under UN mission. And he negotiated for some months with the authorities in Belgrade to return this artifact back to Kosovo. And to this day, this remains the only one that was taken and returned. And I asked this diplomat, why did he work so much to return this artifact? And he told me that in year 2002, there was a political vacuum because the independence happened, the war has ended, people were getting into a stagnation of some sort politically. So we needed, he said to me, to find a positive aspect to present to people. So think again that cultural heritage in the moment when it was a little bit of a crisis for the international community there was used as a positive tool to be presented to people and say, okay, things are moving forward. Look, they have now returned this very important artifact for your identity and what it represents for the capital of your country. So, and this was, again, it is an artifact of high value and as such an important symbol of cultural identity. And now, very quickly, what happens when there is no intervention whatsoever, when diplomacy at high level, when diplomats are not involved, state included? So I want you to look carefully at this photo. In this photo, you see a woman, and this photo is quite famous now. It's been in some international museums. It's this woman is called Mother Ferdonia. Her name is Ferdonia. And this is her home museum. During the war in Kosovo, her 4 sons and her husband, they were taken by the Serbian forces and they were forcefully disappeared. And so they were confirmed dead some years later. So for as many years as it took until the remains of her 2 sons were excavated from the mass grave site in Belgrade, somewhere outside of Belgrade in Serbia. Every day she cooked the same meal. So this photo became iconic because of that. So what happened is she was so determined to turn her family home into a museum because for her, it was so important to actually preserve the memory of her family, of her sons who were missing from one day to another. And her youngest son was 13 years old. So she is a housewife. She was a housewife. She had no education whatsoever. She was certainly not educated in museology. But what she did is she actually single-handedly turned her home into a museum. And when I interviewed her in 2019, she said that after the burial of my 2 sons, I decided to definitely turn my house into a museum because for her, her family had a dream. They existed. They were a normal family, but suddenly they didn't exist anymore. And it's interesting to go actually inside of that home because she took individual objects and she just naturally folded them into transparent foil to preserve them. And now her house has become a destination for people who study archaeology or anthropology or conflict. And in year 2016, even though she lobbied for many years, in year 2016, it was accepted that her home will be officially registered as a museum. So now it is the House Museum in the city of Jakova. This is another example. This is in Belgrade, where human rights activists decided to actually commemorate those victims in Kosovo because they recognize that their authorities committed some horrible things and they were burdened by them. And this is the entryway to one of the biggest grave sites outside of Belgrade in Batajnica. So another activist, she said the following, that these human remains are part of our historical heritage, are part of our heritage in the sense that cultural heritage is not only the beautiful stuff, the artifacts of high value, it's also the histories that actually we identify with, or the histories that identify with us. And therefore, we want to make sense of them. Yeah. Oh, I went 3 minutes over. I'm done nearly. So this is therefore what happens when nobody intervenes and heritage becomes a bottom-up activism. So this woman, she turned her house into a museum, and it's important because documenting oral histories and traditions becomes an act of heritage management and also heritage creation in itself. And also events of a difficult past, achieve the stages of heritage through these types of interventions. And why do we do this? It's because we really want to make sense of the present. In order for us to understand the present, we really need to make sense of what happened in the past. So thank you so much, and sorry for the over.
Thank you to Nora Visoka. Well, it was very interesting, and I'm so sorry that I had to invite you to reduce, because you were just mentioning something where I'm really very much involved, like oral history. I'm working a lot on oral history of the Italian diplomats. So I know what it is and what it means. And thank you for highlighting why and how cultural heritage has a role, as a play in conflicts, not only in conflicts, fortunately, even in many other occasions. Of course, in a way, you mentioned of the unfortunate removal of artifacts in Kosovo at a certain moment. There are some removal of artifacts which takes place even in peacetime, which is sometimes, because of criminal activities. And we know this very well in Italy, unfortunately. But fortunately, since quite a long time now, we have a structure, a very appreciated structure at international level, I must say. And I must say, because I witnessed the appreciation that was recognized to this, our Carabinieri Command for the protection of cultural heritage. We were the first, I think, if not the first anyway, the most effective country to focus. Okay, so Commander Paolo Befera will talk exactly about this. He has the luck now to be, the commander of the operational unit of the Carabinieri Command for the Protection of Cultural Heritage. And I won't take more of your time, because I'm also very keen in listening to what you're going to share with us. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Let me thank His Excellency Ambassador of Kosovo, Nita Shala, for invitation, our General Division, Pietro Salzano, that allows me to present our command. Our command, I will call it from now TPC, it's very long, Carabinieri Command for Protection of Cultural Heritage, has been created in 1969. It was in absolute primacy in the world, because there wasn't also now our Minister of Culture. There wasn't a general law for protection of cultural heritage. The first was the Convention UNESCO of 1917. We were created because our cultural heritage was disappearing. There was a mess. All our cultural heritage was going abroad. So the government asked to us to protect this cultural heritage. One of the most important in the world, you can see some number, 5,000 museum, about 330 archaeological areas, 300,000 churches, and so on. How you can protect such cultural heritage? You must create and structure the command that cover all the country. You must have it here on the ground. We have since 16 units, 2 groups, 1 operational department with specialized sections. First problem to solve. At the beginning, there were only 17 soldiers, 17 carabinieri who had to solve the first problem, the stolen artworks. There was nothing at the beginning. There was only a confused archive, a paper archive. So the carabinieri at the beginning had to go on door to door to create the schedules of the archives of the stolen artworks, okay? So door to door, church by church. You must not think to museums. The museums are already habituated to this, but think the churches, private habitation, the castle. In the years with informatization, we created the greatest database in the world of the illegally stolen cultural assets. Now, in this moment, we have 1,004,400,000 items we are looking for in this moment, okay? You must understand a thing, it's not a normal database. It's not a normal Spoli database in what you put name, surname, place, birth, date, birth, because you have a lot of objects very different, from Paleolithic to modern picture, from 2D, two-dimensional things to three-dimensional things. So you must create something different, a structured database that is made by keys. Some keys you find, you restrict the field, and you arrive to find the thing. But the things are not so easy because the legal market change the things. I will make some example. You find a piece, for example, of the picture, and from one piece you must arrive to the whole one. This is the whole. So who searches in the database, in the catalog, must find this. Some other examples. Then the quality of the photos we have is very low often. You must think we often search for artworks that have been stolen 40, 50, 100 years ago. Look at this. You must imagine what there is near the other panels. This is a classical triptychon, okay? This is original photo. This is what you find. Look at this. You can find a normal landscape, okay? The operator was suspicious for this thing. That was in reality the feet of the saint, for example. So every research is a little investigation. Look at this. This is also now more complicated. They change the pictures. You can say original on the left, what you find on right. They change the big background. They put out the star. Why do you do this? Because first motivation is more difficult to know. But when you have found the picture, you have to demonstrate that is the same picture. They will say, no, but this is another version, okay? Look at this. What's the difference here? Yeah, the shoulder, yeah. We are good carabinieri, okay. These are the persons. Take out the shrimps. Look at this. They make a mess. They put out the flag, make the birds, add the person. This was genial. A boy was passing throughout airport with this picture, a modern picture with no value, but under there was a guercino, a picture of 17th century. Look at this. You can find something not only in the website of the catalog of arts. This is a catalog, a website for sale of private houses. Look at this, the part of the marble is in reality a part of the church. Look at this, we called it art attack. This is crazy. They take a picture, cut the lower part. You see, they make a box, so they have changed the dimension, so they have changed the key to the research. Remember that angel? They put that angel in the new picture. The Carabinieri, the operators, has managed what doesn't fit in this picture for you. Now, something logical. In Christian iconography doesn't exist adoration of the angel. There exists only the adoration of the Christ. Okay, so we are not experts, we are investigators, but you must know the field to arrive to this, okay? Internet changed all things, obviously, in all the fields and also in our field. Before we searched the stolen artwork in the catalog or going to the antiquary, the marketplace, the art gallery, and so on. Now you can search everything on the internet. We have created a new software, stolen works of art detection system that uses artificial intelligence to make that work. A catalog, to search a catalog, an operator, a human operator, needs about 1 week. Swartz makes it in half an hour. So it's very important. And so are some examples what Swartz found and the human operator didn't mean. In this case, it was too little for perspectives, very tricky for human eye, different perspective. White, the color, and the black is very different. Look at this. Sometimes the quality is so low that the human eye cannot recognize and cannot make the check, okay? Look at this flash photos. It is plenty of flash photo. Above all for the picture stolen in the churches. They hadn't the original picture. So you must search for someone that has a picture. Look at this, impossible to find. Look at this, for example. Sometimes the alteration of the picture is so high that it's very difficult to find the right key. For example, they have transformed a Christian subject, St. Agnes, you can see with the lamb, the palm, the whole, in a Sibyl, okay? They changed everything, so a Christian subject has become a pagan subject. It's very difficult to find. But this is one part of the problem. There is the second problem, the excavated artifacts. What about this? For the stolen artworks, you have a photo, a denounce, a bad or good photo, but you have a point to start. How does it work for the excavated artworks? This is a pyramid we call archaeomafia. It begins from the grave robbers, from the base. They find the objects in the archaeological areas. They find a first mediator, and if the object has a great value, above all in abroad, we have a great cultural heritage. Other countries have not that materials. So, and then arrive to the great merchants, the great traffickers of the illegal market. But think, how can I demonstrate that a piece that is excavated in Italy, you didn't know the existence, you see it appear in a museum or in an action house, how can I demonstrate that piece is excavated in Italy? How? See, yeah, but how you can demonstrate it comes from Italy? You have no evidence of that. Then, but you must take the object. The object is abroad. You cannot touch it. So if it's to the, let's say, a name, Getty Museum, okay? I cannot touch that object, okay? How can I make? I demonstrate. I need the judiciary proof, not an expertise. Because expertise, I will put an expert, they will put 10 experts that same the contrary. We have solved the problem arresting or denouncing the big traffickers. When we have made this, we have found their paper archives, their photos, the photo they used to publicize their products on the illegal market. I show you a plastic operation in what with the investigation, we have cleaned all the pyramid from the base to the top. Grave robbers, you see the tool. Do you know the tool is spillone in Italian, the spill, a great spill. They managed to draw the stone of the grave with that operation. They are very, very good in this. In one morning, they managed to draw all what there is. They enter and destroy all. These are the first meditions, the exchange of the objects, and then the great trafficker. This is an operation of 2021. They used the trains with some helpers, and it took with the train all the object abroad. We arrested in 3 times in Belgium, Netherlands, and Monaco. These are the caveau, the warehouses he had built with all these objects. So that photo are the proof that the objects at our. I must go quick. Sometime we managed to obtain the confiscation of object abroad, but sometimes that country doesn't know that provision. So we have created a cultural tool, a committee for recovery and the restitution of cultural heritage. So we go with 2 rails from judicial channel from one side. It begins a judiciary war that can go on for 20, 30 years, and then a cultural agreement. Sometime we manage to recover the object in this way. Last thing, blue helmets of culture. Nora, Mrs. Nora was speaking about this. We have created a task force of trained military, of trained carabinieri with expert of Ministry of Culture that can intervene in 2 cases, natural disasters and pre-post conflict when there is a stabilized area. For example, we have recovered in the last earthquake in Italy that numbers of cultural objects. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much to Commander Befera. I'm so sorry that I also had to interrupt him because it's so fascinating to learn how many activities. This is not the first time that I hear about the activity of the Carabinieri in this field, but every time I assure you, I discover something new, and I feel proud that we have this kind of organization so effective. And as a diplomat, I can say this is also something which we share with others as a best practice very often, and it's very much appreciated. It's another contribution to the safeguard of the cultural heritage. So, but now let's move on to somebody who knows a little bit of a place where cultural heritage is quite concentrated, if I can. We are so lucky that we live in this city. And architect Alessandro Mascherucci is, well, now since a long time, I can say, part of this special superintendence of Rome. And he has been involved in so many projects, I would say idea, projects, activities. There are restoration. You will name it as you want, and you will tell us a little bit about, from your experience, how do you see and what do you mean by cultural heritage, and how this is in Rome lived, is interpreted, declined in Rome, what it means. I think I consider this as an incredible challenge for sure, but also you have heavy responsibilities. So I leave it to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors, authorities, colleagues, and distinguished guests. It is my honor to speak today on a topic that not only defines our collective identity, but also guides our daily professional endeavor, the safeguarding and enhancement of cultural heritage. We yet heard the precious relation of the TPC command of a colleague and a friend, Colonnello Paolo Befera, and I will speak also about some project we realized together. In my capacity as an official of the Special Superintendence of Roma, I witness every day the delicate balance between conservation and public enjoyment of our extraordinary heritage. In Rome, this balance takes on a particular dimension due to the unmatched density and stratification of history. Our city is a living palimpsest where the legacy of antiquity, the medieval, Renaissance, and Baroque layers and traces of modernity coexist. Yet Rome, like many historic cities, is also a space of transformation, exposed to urban pressures, climatic shifts, and tourism dynamics of growing complexity. It's essential to reiterate that heritage is not a static entity. Rather, it is a dynamic resource able to foster intercultural dialogue, to strengthen social cohesion, and to contribute to sustainable development in line with the United Nations 2030 agenda. In this spirit, our superintendency is engaged in initiatives that treat heritage as a common good. For example, the restoration of the Church of Santa Maria del Popolo, which stands as one of the most important cultural intervention in the city center, executed through a public-private partnership and opened to the public for an extended period. Another example is the discovery of a fresco that was inside the Caserma Giacomo Acqua in Piazza del Popolo, where me and Colonel Befera was engaged. And now on Monday, you will see in the new exposition in Palazzo delle Esposizioni, made possible by Intesa San Paolo. Another important example is the restoration of the complex of Santo Spirito in Sassia, made possible with the friend Paola Casale that is here today, and with the joiners with the ASL Roma Uno, and the Region Lazio, and other partners. So, which is the role of heritage protection and the institution? The protection of cultural heritage in Italy is founded on a strong legal framework. widely regarded internationally as among the most advanced. The legislative decree 42 of 2004 already cited, together with the Article 9 of the Italian Constitution, assigns to the Republic the task of protecting the landscape and the historical and artistic heritage of the nation, and introduces the concept of environment as a constitutional value. At an operational level, the superintendency carries out its work through tools such as the Declaration of Cultural Interest, oversight of buildings, works, and intervention, inspection and sanctioning activities, promotion, restoration, research, and enhancement in collaboration with local authorities and international partners. Yet alongside protection, today more than ever we must assert the centrality of enhancement defined in a cultural code as the promotion of awareness of cultural heritage and assurance of the best condition for public utilization and enjoyment. The enhance means to make heritage accessible, inclusive, educational, able to generate a well-being and sustainable development without ever compromising its integrity. So, we all know that Rome is a laboratory of protection and global challenge. Rome, as capital city and heritage capital, is a living laboratory of many challenges and opportunities. Our daily work as special superintendencies sees us engaged on multiple fronts. For example, as just we see, preventive archaeology in public and private construction sites. For instance, the large-scale urban infrastructure works such as Metro C and the Caput Mundi projects under the PNRR. Structural monitoring of historical monuments that is so important, the prevention, employing new technologies and protocols to address the effects of age, environment, and use. Education on heritage in schools and university, and collaboration with local communities and migrant communities, bringing multiple intangible heritage into dialogue. In an urban context in continuous transformation, we must combine technical rigor, cultural vision, and interinstitutional dialogue. It is a challenge that requires professional expertise, technical commitment, and also courage. Allow me to bring forth a few technical and project-specific highlights of our recent works. For example, is an example of restoration intervention, the one at the complex of San Tommaso in Formis at Villa Celimontana, where the superintendency, together with the CREA, Council for Agricultural Research and Economics, signed an agreement to restore the historic city wall enclosure of the site, dating back nearly 2 millennia. Another example is the archaeology, preventive, and digitalization. Within our jurisdiction, the development of the system CITAR, Territorial Archaeological Information System of Rome, who everyone can see in internet, allows the digital mapping and dynamic management of Rome's enormous archaeological archive, supporting decision-making, permitting research and public access. Another front is the climate-aware monitoring and maintenance. We are implementing sensor networks and monitoring regimes for major monuments, linking structural health, material degradation, and environmental data as part of our commitment to resilience and adaptation in heritage conservation. And another important element is the public engagement and participatory governance. Through the Cantieri Narranti, that is a communication project of the superintendencies, we have initiated visible restoration sites that acts as a narrative platform, engaging citizens in the process of conservation and raising awareness of sustainable techniques and natural materials. No, investing in heritage means investing in safety, in education, in economy, and in social cohesion. Like, for example, the sacred area of Largo Argentina, opened in partnership with the Comune di Roma. Therefore, it's imperative to adopt a shared commitment in which the state, local authorities, universities, citizens, and business collaborate in strategic, stable, and transparent manner. Heritage cannot be siloed in specialist domains. It must be part of urban policy, social policy, climate, and economical policy. With the Jubilee 2025 and the National Recovery Funds, PNR, in play, the time is ripe to align cultural heritage with broader political agendas of resilience, inclusion, and sustainable growth. Allow me to
Sorry. You are concluding.
Yes.
I don't want to interrupt.
Sorry.
No,
It's
go
the
ahead.
conclusion.
Conclude. Sorry.
So the safeguard cultural heritage is not an end in itself. It is an act of responsibility toward the past, but above all, an investment in future. As UNESCO Director General Audrey Azoulay once said, the protection of cultural heritage is a collective duty, an act of peace, and a bridge between generations. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much to Architetto Mascarucci. It was really, I know, hard to summarize all the activities, all the challenges, and I'm very glad on the, on the final, let's say, very positive perspective thinking that you shared with us, because it's very important. And I think today, not only we want to highlight the importance of cultural heritage, but also to make all these participants aware on why all these efforts are being done at all levels. Now we get to our last panelist, and it's a great pleasure for me to introduce Virginia Di Gaetano. She's a journalist. She writes. I advise you to take a look on all the things that you will find that she writes online as well. I was just telling her that the last thing that I've been reading about here is about Umbria. That's where I was born. So I thought it was a very good idea. But of course, there's so much in Italy that you can talk about and write about. And she's very much involved in a certain idea of tourism and knowledge about this, very much related to cultural heritage. So I would like to ask her, invite her to tell us a little bit on the relationship, because this can be, kind of threat and opportunity about tourism. Thank you, Virginia.
Okay, great. Can I ask quickly, how many of you in the room are from Rome? And how many of you that are from Rome, how many of you live in the center of Rome? Okay. So I ask you that because I do want to talk about the paradox in a way of tourism. So it's funny to be here with people who do very important and excellent work, and then tell you I write for Lonely Planet, I write guidebooks. But the challenge is to say, is tourism the way that we know, all of us know tourism now, is it a threat or is it an opportunity? And you would not be wrong, and I wouldn't blame any of you if you thought that tourism was a threat. Because for the most part right now, it is. And the reason that tourism is such a threat these days and how it's become such a bad word. How many of you here, for example, have ever said, I'm not a tourist, I'm a traveler? Has anybody ever said that? Yeah. I'm not, I don't go to those places. They're only for tourists. You said that. Oh God, we can't go to that place anymore. It's only tourists that are there. Okay. How many of you have ever traveled to another place in your life? So we're all tourists, right? We're all tourists at some point. Yeah, we never want to be where tourists are. That's a bit weird, isn't it? And that's partially because tourism has become this dirty word. And why is that? Because it's because of the stress that it places on sites of historical interest, on communities around the world, and on the cities in which we live. So when we talk about, and I talk a lot about over-tourism. I write a lot about over-tourism. So, but over-tourism, it represents this threat and what we know as tourism now. And then almost anywhere in the world, tourism has become mass tourism. It's everywhere. You know, we can go anywhere in the world and you can do your very best to plan a trip where you are the only person there and you will get there and there are 14,000 other people there who have planned to be the only person there. The planet is crawling with us. We're moving around everywhere. And in the process, over-tourism is eroding a lot of the cultural heritage that we're all looking to find when we go to places, that all of these people are working so hard to preserve. But it's not because of us. It's not because of the crowds. Over-tourism and overcrowding are not the same thing. Over-tourism is a lack of infrastructure. It's a lack of access to resources between the people who come to a place and the people who live in a place. Now, all of you who are from Rome, but don't live in the center of Rome, I'm going to make a giant assumption and assume that you don't live in the center of Rome, not because you think, meh, that wouldn't be fun, but because you can't afford it. And why can't you afford it? Because every place is a B&B or an Airbnb or something, some level of tourism accommodation. That has inflated the price of real estate so that you cannot live there anymore. But the trick is you are the culture. You are cultural heritage. You are the ones who people are supposedly coming to see. But if they want to see you, they're going to have to get on 2 metros or a bus or go out really far because they're not going to find you at the Campo di Fiori. So when we talk about over-tourism, it's a lack of access to resources that actually pit communities and cultures with visitors. So it becomes this feeling of an invasion. And you're right to feel that way. We're all right to feel that way. But it's not our fault. Because over-tourism is essentially a political failure. When the state, any state, fails to provide, to create that infrastructure, to use the revenue that comes from tourism, not only to continue to build up hotels and cool restaurants and places that we cannot afford to go to, but should use that as well, and is not using that to make sure that people have housing, make sure that people have access to water, which is not as much a problem in Rome, but in places like Barcelona, people, you know, one of the things that people fight about is the fact that there's not access to water for people who live there because one hotel has just built 5 new swimming pools. So how are we supposed to relate to each other when that's the case? And how are we supposed to experience culture when we get to a place and people say, I don't want to share my culture with you, you took my water? How can we expect that, right? We can't expect that. And so, unfortunately, instead of building these resilient infrastructures, where just taking the example of this city, this incredible city, you can't live there and you can't grow and you can't build your families and you can't build your careers in the center of it. More and more governments, much like the current government, are investing more money in luxury tourism tourism that is prohibitively expensive, so that many of the cultural resources and cultural heritage is actually only reserved for those people who can pay for it. Invitalia, right? Invitalia is an investment and credit agency in Italy, and they work with the Agenzia del Demonio, who preserve cultural heritage sites, and they own them. It's a state-owned property. And they have listings available for foreign investors to buy or to let on a long lease of properties that are sometimes around or located within UNESCO heritage sites, or are properties that have a true cultural importance, that they're willing to develop into luxury hotels that I will never afford to go to. Many of us, I hope you can all afford to go to them, but the likelihood is that we can't. The island of Poveglia, for example, which is near Venice, is a nature reserve that has no electricity, it has no running water on it, but it's a reserve that the citizens of Venice, the residents of Venice, are fighting to maintain control of, so that they can use it as a park, use it as a refuge for people, because Venice often has a lack of parks and an overwhelming number of visitors. But that property is on offer. Someone can buy that. Somebody feels like, hey, let's build the next new hotel in Venice, they can. It's not illegal. There's nothing illegal about it. I'm not really sure if it's immoral, but it's a form, it is in a sense a form of prostitution, isn't it? We turn tourism into a form of cultural prostitution, which if we're consenting adults, great. But when you're not consenting, it's a problem. Because when we're selling off these assets and commodifying these incredible assets that are intangible and priceless, what are we saying about what tourism is? It's just a force for selling off as much as we can. It's a bit like overfishing, right? Eventually, there's just nothing left. What do we eat? Who are we? What do we do? So that is the challenge. So tourism does present that very real threat. So that was inspiring, wasn't it? Yeah, welcome. So, however, so how do we fix that? How do we make people care about, how do we fix tourism? Let's fix it. What do we have, 4 minutes? I have 2 minutes. Okay, great. So here's the thing. Why do you go anywhere? Ask yourself that. Why do you go? You don't have to answer right now. But when you travel, why do you go? Because to be honest, right? To be honest, at this point now, you can watch a million TikTok videos and they will be easier to, they'll show you everything you need to know about a place. You can probably buy a pair of sunglasses and they'll close your eyes and you can just see a place. Why do we go anywhere? We go to places to feel something, right? So what if we make people care about where they're going? So what if we made people think about, and this is one of the projects we have that we're working on now, is to think about places in the same way we think about endangered species. Everybody knows like the turtles, Galapagos turtles, for a while they were almost extinct. Then people started to care about them. They started to see them as endangered. Destinations, places are the same thing. They are endangered because although they are these palimpsests like Rome, they're not forever. Right. So how do you get people to start caring? Well, you do what we are trying to develop in our own way. First of all, is you ask people like me to do a better job, because people like me should be the intermediaries and the mediators between people and places. If you read a guidebook and it doesn't tell you anything interesting, you should call that guidebook out. Call those people out to task, because travel writing should not be about the top 10 places to get a gelato in the middle of Rome. What travel writing should be about is why we care. And if it isn't, then you should call people out on that. You should want better writing. You should want better information. Everybody should want better information, which is why we talk about developing a new pedagogy of travel and an epistemology of tourism. So those fancy words are really just to be able to say how to get people to travel better. And then we come back to the idea of how everybody hates being called a tourist. But here's the thing. Somebody told me this once, and I'm finished on this. Somebody told me this once that I think it was a lie. I think it was somebody drunk. It was in France. You know how that stuff goes, guys. Come on. They said that the word tourist actually comes from foreigners who would come and protect towers around in the medieval times, because, you know, a tower in France is a tour. And these were people who would come around and they would protect it. I'm not sure if it's true, but who cares? Etymology is stupid. Hope nobody's a Greek professor, but who cares? The point is to think about, if we think about tourism, and we start to think about tourism and our role as tourists, as those who defend a place. When we go there, we're defending it. We are allied to it. We're going to see the Museum of Stolen Art, of Reclaimed Art, which is just near Termini Station, which is incredible, and listen to oral histories and care about those things. And we defend a place. We don't just go there, but we're there, we're present in it. We move that one step further to keeping a place alive. And that's what we should be doing. That's what we should be doing as tourists. And that's what we should be doing anytime we travel. And if we start to do that a little bit more, little by little, then we do start to see that things do actually get a bit better. They really do. So I'll end on the idea that I hope that one day all of you are living right in the center of Rome, because we have fixed this together, you guys. And then we come back here and we say, we did it. We're tourists because we're tourists. And that's the way we wind up preserving culture.
Thank you very much, Virginia. I must say I live very close to the center, and I hope they will not kick me out. So I hope to stay. So it's very nice and very nice what you say about what can be done, and it's a challenge also for you to do it, and I hope we will go through. It's very interesting. I would like, please, George.
I wanted to thank all of you, and I wanted to apologize if we had to squeeze because the previous event went longer. And we have an historical moment. For the first time in the world, two ambassadors, Armenia and Azerbaijan, are going to share the same floor, and they're going to shake their hands. So I wish you, I thank you for all this, and I ask you just to a round of applause for everybody. We can, thank you very much. The ambassador of Armenia, please. Excuse me. The ambassador of Azerbaijan. And this event will be introduced by Minister Sokolovic, that is the counselor of the mayor of Rome, diplomatic counselor of the mayor of Rome. The floor is yours. In mezzo, sì.